They didn't whisper when they spoke of her. They didn't need to. Thra's size always announced her before words could. On the frost-laced cliffs of Grither's northern ridge, the exile camp crouched low like a wound that refused to freeze shut. The wind howled against the bone-white stone, a soundless scream where no one listened. And in the center of it all, Thra stood alone. 7 feet, 9 inches. Broad as a war beast, built like a siege engine. Too large for ceremony silks, too loud for the subtle grace of her kind, and, according to the elders, too big to breed. The words had not been whispered. They were declared before the matron assembly, cast into the record spire, etched into truth. A biological anomaly. Her ovum unstable, her skeletal structure unsuitable for optimal gestation compatibility. A liability, a spectacle, an embarrassment. So they had sent her here, north of the binding range, where failed matings crippled males, and broken laws found their final breath. Not with cruelty, but with cool efficiency. Grit-Hari justice wasn't harsh. It was precise. And precision didn't make room for someone like her. Thra adjusted the weight of a hunting spear across her back, its iron half-dwarfed in her massive hand. She scanned the jagged horizon. Snow churned low, blue with ash. A storm was coming. Good, she thought. Storms didn't ask questions. Storms didn't judge. A flicker of motion caught her eye metal. Too smooth, too symmetrical for nature. She squinted. Machines. Small ones. Drones. Not Grit-Hari. Her second heart thudded once. Hard. She dropped into a crouch behind a stone outcrop, massive fingers pressing into snow. The drones zipped past overhead, copper-bodied, blue-lit, whispering in a language she didn't recognize. Her breath plumed before her, slow and silent. Then came the ship. It didn't roar like Grit-Hari dropships. It hummed. Gentle, almost curious. Sleek lines, burnished silver hull, Earth-standard markings on the underbelly. Humans. She'd heard of them. Off-worlders with strange teeth and soft skin. Trade partners. Liars. Explorers. Interferers. She should have moved. Should have run deeper into the ridge. Instead, she stood. Exposed. Tall. The ramp extended with a hiss. And out he came. Not a warrior. Not a general. Just a man. Average height by their standards. Narrow shoulders, thick coat, frost-dampened boots. His skin was pale, lips chapped, eyes squinting against the cold. He looked absurd. Ridiculous. And then he looked at her. Not past her. Not through her. At her. Time slowed. A wind-wrapped silence stretched between them. Her pulse ticked once, twice, in the side of her throat. Then he raised one gloved hand and waved. Waved. Like they were neighbors meeting in a courtyard. Like she wasn't a discarded genetic mishap squatting on the edge of civilization. Like she was real. Thra frowned. "What do you want?" she called, her voice a deep-chested rumble, the kind that made smaller beings flinch. He grinned. And God's help her, he actually looked pleased. "Hey," he said, in thick-accented Grit-Hari. "Name's Jace. I brought coffee. I heard the north gets cold." "Coffee?" She blinked. The human held up a steaming thermos, like an offering to some frost-bound deity. "You, live here?" Thra stepped forward. Just once. Snow crunched. The drones shifted. He didn't flinch. "Yes," she said flatly. "I live here. Alone." "Well," Jay said, smiling like the storm didn't matter, like exile wasn't a sentence. "I guess that makes you the local expert." And somehow, impossibly, he sat down on a crate beside his ship, patting the space next to him. Thra stared at him, at the human who saw her not as broken stock or a breeding chart anomaly, but as someone to talk to. And for the first time in 6 cycles, she didn't feel cold. The first time Thra saw him smile, it felt like blasphemy. Something so warm had no right existing this far north. She watched from a ridge above, the thermos of coffee cradled in both her hands, the steam curling around her tusks. The taste had been bitter, strange, like burnt soil laced with heat. But it lingered, clung to the back of her throat in a way she didn't mind. Jace had been camped there for 2 days now, not studying the cliffs, not setting up scientific instruments or measuring climate drift. just talking. To her. He asked questions like someone digging for treasure where others saw rubble. Questions about her hunting tools, about the glyphs carved into the ice walls of the exile caves, about the spiral tattoos wrapped around her wrists, worn by the unfit line. She'd answered slowly at first, unsure if his curiosity was another flavor of mockery. But it wasn't. The human didn't flinch at her size, didn't avoid her gaze, didn't speak like a scholar explaining her own world to her. He just listened, and when he smiled, it reached his eyes. Now he was pacing the icy shelf below her, hood pulled low, muttering to a datapad and swiping through alien glyphs on a screen. Thera tilted her head. "You're going to fall." "No, I won't," he said without looking up. "I have gravity grips." "You are still going to fall." He took one more step, and his boots slid out from under him with a surprised yelp. The datapad flew from his hands. Jace hit the snow on his back with a grunt. Thera didn't laugh, but her chest did shake. Jace looked up at her from the snowbank, winded and stunned. "Okay," he wheezed. In my defense, that was more of a tactical descent. She leapt down the embankment in a single stride, landing beside him like thunder in boots. With one arm, she lifted him to his feet. "You're light," she said, brushing snow from his jacket with a single massive hand. "Like bird bone." "That's just rude," Jace muttered, dusting himself off. "I'll have you know, I'm in peak human condition." Thera arched a brow. "Peak. I'd eat vegetables and take stairs," he said, as if that settled the matter. Anyway, this, he retrieved the datapad, now blinking red, was worth the near-death experience. "I finally translated your clan script." She stiffened. "Why would you do that?" He turned the screen toward her. "Because no one else bothered to ask what it meant." The glyphs appeared in hovering blue light. Strength without control is chaos. Control without strength is cowardice. Her clan saying, the motto carved into the stone above every birthing hall in the southern cities. A motto that had damned her. Thera looked away. "It doesn't matter." "It does to me," Jay said softer now. "You're not chaos. You're not a mistake." Thera's jaw tightened. She felt something raw press against her chest, old, sharp-edged, and buried for too long. "Why are you really here, human?" Jace hesitated. For once, the easy grin didn't come. "Because I read a field report," he said finally. "Buried in a science log. It mentioned a genetic outlier among the exiled females, one whose cell structure showed adaptive enhancements that didn't match the dominant reproductive genome. I thought, that doesn't sound like an error. That sounds like evolution." Thera blinked. "You came here for a specimen?" "No," he said quickly. "I came here for you. I wanted to see who they threw away and why." He stepped closer, cold breath mingling with hers. "They didn't exile you because you were broken," Jay said. "They exiled you because you don't fit in a system built to keep things small, predictable, breedable." Thera's hands curled into fists. Not in anger. In memory. "I was 12 when they first measured me," she murmured. The matron said, "No male would take a female who could break him with a sigh. They taught me to walk softer, speak less, make myself small." "But you're not small," Jay said. "And you shouldn't have to be." A silence stretched between them again, but this one was different. Not filled with suspicion. Something warmer, older. Like the slow thaw before spring. He pulled something from his coat pocket, a small metal badge shaped like a hexagon. "I'm with the Cross-Cultural Contact Division. I write the histories no one else bothers to record." He offered it to her. "Let me write yours." "Not for the Federation. For you." She stared at it. Then, at him. "No one wants my story," she said. "I do," Jace replied. "And I think a lot of others will too. Once they finally see you." Thera looked out over the snowy plain. The wind had calmed. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel like a mistake. She felt seen. And maybe, just maybe, that was the beginning of something more. They summoned her like a criminal, as if her dignity were something that could be put on trial. The message came at dawn, delivered by a cold-eyed courier drone bearing the black seal of the Grithari elders. A circle broken in the center. The mark of judgment. Thera stood in the mouth of her cavern, fists clenched. The wind tore at her cloak, but she barely noticed. Below her, nestled against the cliffside in its sleek silver casing, the human's ship blinked with soft lights. He was still asleep inside. She almost didn't tell him. But then she heard the rustling of boots and snow, and he was there, Jace yawning, eyes still bleary, pulling on his coat with one arm and holding a mug of that strange bitter brew in the other. "You're leaving," he said quietly. "Not a question." "I've been summoned," she replied. "To the Hall of Weighing. They want a formal review of my unauthorized contact with an off-world species." Jace whistled low. "You're not military. You're not even in the breeding track anymore. Why would they care?" Thera didn't answer right away. She didn't need to. He got it. "Oh," he said. "Because of me." "Because of us," she corrected. She should have been afraid. Her last visit to the capital had ended in exile. The next could end in something worse. But instead, she felt calm, heavy with clarity. "I'm going with you," Jay said, already stepping toward the ship. "No way I'm letting a council of space aristocrats drag you in like some kind of mutant for daring to exist." "You have no standing," she said. "I'm human," he replied. "We never wait to be given one." The capital hadn't changed. Still 1,000 shades of ice and polished stone. Still ringing with the hum of wind turbines and distant judgment. They brought her through side corridors, flanked by 2 silver-armored custodians who wouldn't meet her eye. Not once. Inside the Hall of Weighing, 12 elders sat on curved thrones, each one taller than the last. A design meant to symbolize hierarchy, power, control. Thera stood in the center of the circle, Jace just behind her. The light above them was cold and blue, calculated to make the accused look smaller. It didn't work. Thera, daughter of Hask, former candidate of a southern lineage, one of the elders said, "You were exiled on grounds of incompatibility with the reproductive order. Why have you returned unbidden?" "I was summoned," Thera said flatly, "by your drone, to answer for your association with the Offworlder. You've broken the covenant of isolation." Jace stepped forward. "I asked her to talk to me." The room turned silent. A pause. Then the lead elder leaned forward. "Human, you are not authorized to speak." "Well," Jace said, hands in his pockets, "I'm not great with authority." Gasps. Thera closed her eyes. Foolish man. But when she looked again, the faintest flicker of something had changed in the room. A ripple. Cracks in marble. "Your interference has disturbed a precarious balance," another elder said. "We cannot allow the implications of your union to spread." "What implications?" Thera said, her voice sharper than the wind outside. "That strength without balance is acceptable. That deviation is desire. That exile can be reversed." The word stung. But she did not bend. Jace moved beside her and raised a small holoprojector. "I've compiled records. Genetic overlays. Evolutionary viability charts. Everything about Thera suggests advancement, not degradation." "She is not of concern to your science," the lead elder snapped. "She should be," Jace said. "Because you didn't cast her out to preserve your people. You did it to preserve your control." Silence. "Then, very well," said the elder. "If your bond is as deep as you claim, then you will stand trial in the ancient way. The trial of union." Thera inhaled sharply. "That right is reserved for joined pairs." "And that," the elder said, "is what we intend to test." The last time anyone attempted the trial of union without a breeding match, they were carried out in pieces. Thera stood at the edge of the arena, her boots sinking into the dusted ice floor. The crowd watched in heavy silence from the amphitheater above, Grit-Hari of every caste and color, draped in ceremonial gray, waiting not for victory, but for failure. For proof that the exile and the Offworlder were just as broken as the elders had said. "They mean to humiliate us," Thera muttered, flexing her hands. "This trial isn't justice. It's spectacle." Jace tightened the straps on his exosuit, its frame buzzing softly as it adjusted to the cold. "Good," he said. "I've always been terrible at playing along." She glanced at him, startled by the calm in his voice. No fear. No bravado either. Just readiness. He was standing beside her, fully aware he was about to be measured against the impossible. A bell sounded above, deep and slow. One note. The gates opened. Out of the frost came the constructs, 6 of them, towering biomechanical beasts made for ritual combat. Each one sculpted in the image of old Grithari myths. Talons like obsidian scythes, maws that hissed with steam, sinews of woven ice and steel. Jace exhaled slowly. Those look friendly. They're not, Thera said. She crouched, muscles coiling like thick cords beneath her skin. Jace activated his exosuit, servos whining as the frame locked into combat mode. And just like that, they ran straight into the fray. The first construct lunged, fangs flashing. Thera intercepted it mid-leap, slamming her shoulder into its chest with a thunderous crack. Metal crumpled. The thing hit the ground hard, skidding across the ice. Jace ducked another swipe, rolled under its legs, and jammed a pulse grenade beneath its chassis. It exploded in a bloom of blue fire, sending the construct toppling sideways. The crowd gasped. The elders leaned forward. And still, the test continued. Thera bled from her left shoulder, a shallow gash where metal met skin. Jace limped now, one boot cracked, suit alarms blinking yellow. But they were still standing, still moving. Together. Another wave. This time, the constructs came faster, coordinated, flanking from both sides. Thera grabbed a jagged spear from the arena floor, ceremonial, dull-tipped, more symbol than weapon. In her hands, it became something else. She drove it through one construct's head and spun, her body a storm of movement. Jace backed into her, breath ragged. "Remind me to never piss you off." "You already have," she growled. Then smiled. They fought for what felt like hours, though the elders had set the trial for exactly 47 minutes, the length of one full solar pulse. At the final bell, 4 constructs lay in ruin. 2 remained inactive, their AI cores shut down by remote signal. A final test had to be passed. Jace knew it before anyone said a word. A custodian stepped forward and declared, "Only one may remain. The other must yield." Thera froze. Jace looked up at her, drenched in sweat, eyes ringed with exhaustion. "You know what this is?" "Yes," she whispered. "A test of submission." "A test of dominance," Jace corrected. "They want to see who breaks the bond first." She could see it then, how the elders had laid the trap. Either Thera dominated him and proved the fear of her size true, or she submitted, and they'd say it was only because of human interference. A no-win. Unless. Jace dropped his spear. The arena fell silent. He stepped forward, raised both hands, and knelt, not in defeat. In respect. "I yield," he said, voice steady. "To her strength. To her judgment. To her." Thera stared, throat tight. The elders conferred in urgent whispers. Then, trial complete. Union confirmed. The crowd was stunned. And then, impossibly, cheers. From the lower tiers. From the outcasts. From the young. It grew, rippled, spread like a wave breaking across ice. Thera didn't move for a long time. Then she reached down and pulled the human to his feet. "Not bad," she said softly. Jace smiled through a busted lip. "Did we just win?" "No," Thera said. "We just rewrote the rules." Victory tasted bitter, as if the blood spilled had not been from the constructs, but from them, the elders, the ones who'd cast her aside. The crowd's cheers still echoed in Thera's ears as she and Jace stood at the base of the arena, the battle's final moments still fresh. The elders' verdict had been swift, union confirmed. But what that union truly meant, neither of them knew yet. Thera's muscles ached from the trial, but a different weight pressed on her chest, heavier than exhaustion. The realization that by yielding to Jace, she hadn't just defied the elders. She had defied everything she had been taught to believe about herself. That night, they stood alone on the cliffside overlooking the capital, the lights of the city below flickering like distant stars. Jace was sitting on a flat stone, staring out over the abyss. "You're quiet," she said, voice low. He rubbed his jaw, just trying to process. Thera leaned against the stone, arms crossed. "I thought you weren't afraid of authority." "I'm not," he said. But I didn't expect them to just let us off the hook. They're still watching. Her eyes narrowed. You think they'll retaliate? Jace looked up, meeting her gaze. His expression was unreadable, as always, but the tension in his jaw betrayed something. I don't think they're finished with us. Thera felt a cold knot settle in her gut. If they retaliated, it could be worse than exile. Worse than death. We'll be ready, she said, straightening. You sure about that? Jace's voice was quiet, almost contemplative. Because you've been playing by their rules all your life. It's going to take more than a couple of bruises to break those chains. Thera didn't respond right away. She had spent her entire existence proving that she wasn't just another breeding failure, another pawn in their game. And yet, here she was, standing on the edge of a precipice, her future uncertain, her past still haunting her like a shadow. Your species, she said finally, her voice rough, you don't understand exile. Not the way we do. Jace raised an eyebrow. Maybe not. But I understand being underestimated. And I think you've been underestimated your whole life. Her heart skipped a beat. By you too? His answer was immediate. No, not by me. Something in her chest twisted. Jace smiled, though it was tired, like he hadn't slept in days. You don't need to carry the weight of the past anymore. Not for them. Not for anyone. Thera turned away, gazing out at the glowing horizon. You think it's that simple? No, he said softly. But nothing worth fighting forever is. She wanted to say more, but the shrill sound of a distant horn broke the moment. A signal. From the capital. A figure emerged from the shadows behind them, a cloaked figure, moving swiftly, their face obscured by a hood. They were tall, slender, with the unmistakable grace of the Grithari elite. Who is that? Jace asked, standing quickly. Thera's posture stiffened. She could feel the tension ripple through her body, the hairs on her neck standing on end. It's a messenger, she said, her voice colder than she intended. And when they come, it's never good news. The figure stepped closer, pulling back the hood to reveal an older Grithari male. His face lined with experience, his eyes sharp with intent. Thera, the messenger said. His voice was steady, almost formal. You've been summoned by the council. Jace's hand instinctively reached for his blaster, but Thera caught his wrist. Don't, she said, her voice calm. Let's see what they want. The messenger's eyes flickered to Jace, but he didn't acknowledge him. The council has made its decision. You and your companion will stand before the High Tribunal at sunrise. Thera's heart sank. The tribunal, she whispered. The messenger nodded. You will answer for your defiance, and you will pay the price for challenging the order. Jace stepped forward, his voice laced with disbelief. You can't be serious. We just fought for our lives, our right to exist in your system. And now you want to throw us in front of a tribunal. The messenger didn't flinch. The trial is not over. Thera's gaze flicked to Jace. There was no fear in his eyes, only determination, and that gave her strength. The real fight was just beginning. We'll be there, she said, her voice cold with resolve. But know this, we're not going down quietly. The messenger nodded once, then turned and disappeared into the shadows. Thera looked at Jace, and for the first time since their victory, she allowed herself to smile. They may think they can break us, but they don't know what it means to be human. And you don't know what it means to be Grithari, Jace replied, his grin matching hers. No, Thera said softly, stepping toward the ship. But I'm about to find out. The High Tribunal was a place where verdicts were final, and mercy was a myth. Thera had never set foot in the Grand Hall. Most Grithari never did, except as petitioners, pleading for the chance to exist in a world that had already decided their fates. But now, as the massive doors swung open and the chilling air of the tribunal hall rushed over her, she realized something. The room was not a place for judgment. It was a place for punishment. Jace walked beside her, his presence like a tether in the chaos of her mind. The intricate carvings of the ancient hall stretched up into a towering dome, where the faces of past elders were immortalized in stone. Their eyes were hollow, watching, always watching. They reached the center of the room, where 12 high-backed thrones loomed, each one occupied by an elder. Their robes shimmered in the dim light, a blend of deep cobalt and silver that spoke of both status and authority. The lead elder, a figure so ancient his skin was almost translucent, rose from his seat. Thera, daughter of Hask, his voice echoed, low and cold. And Jace, off-worlder from Earth, you stand accused of disrupting the sacred balance of our people. Your actions have threatened the very foundation of our society. Thera's heart beat in her throat. She didn't flinch as the elder's gaze pierced through her. She'd been exiled once. She could endure this. Jace stood tall, his expression unwavering. We're not here to beg for your approval, he said, his voice steady. We're here to stand as equals. A murmur rippled through the elders, and for a moment, the air seemed to thicken with their collective judgment. The elder who had spoken before raised a hand, silencing the room. Equals. The elder's lips curled in a thin smile. You believe yourself equal to the Gridhari? To the laws of our ancestors? Jace didn't flinch. We don't believe in laws that cage people. We believe in choice, in freedom, in the right to live without being controlled. Thera felt a flicker of something in her chest, a warmth, unfamiliar but welcome. She looked at Jace, his defiance a sharp contrast to the cold, unyielding atmosphere around them. The elder's smile faded, his voice turning cold as ice. You are fools. Your union is a mockery, a failure of our lineage. Thera's fists clenched, but Jace's voice cut through her rage. You say we're a failure? You're the ones who cast her out. You're the ones who condemned her to a life of exile for being different, for being strong. The room fell silent. The High Tribunal watched them, unmoving, but something shifted in the air. Enough, the elder said, his voice low and dangerous. This trial will proceed, and we shall see if your actions can be justified, if your bond can withstand the weight of the laws of our people. Another elder, a woman whose eyes burned with a cold fury, stood and gestured toward a pair of custodians standing at the side. They approached with two ceremonial blades, ancient weapons forged in the deepest parts of the northern ice fields, made to test the strength of a Gridhari spirit. Your trial, the elder continued, will be one of endurance. These blades will test your willpower, your unity. You will face the trial alone. The one who falters first will be deemed unworthy, and the other will be forced to sever the bond between you. Thera's blood ran cold as she stared at the blades. She knew them well. The trial of endurance was a ritual, so old it was spoken of only in whispers. To endure it was to prove not just physical strength, but mental fortitude, the power to withstand the unimaginable. Jace turned to her, his brow furrowed. Thera, we don't have to do this. We don't have a choice, she replied, her voice steady despite the storm brewing in her chest. We've already crossed the line. This is the price of defiance. She reached for the blade first, gripping it with both hands, feeling its cold weight settle into her palms. The elder nodded, and the room fell silent once more. You may begin. The first strike came without warning. Thera braced herself, but the pain hit like a jagged bolt, cutting deep into her shoulder. The blade didn't pierce her flesh, it burned, as if the metal itself sought to tear away her very spirit. She gritted her teeth, refusing to scream. Next came Jace. He took his strike with a grunt, his body jerking back from the force. His blood stained the ice beneath them, but neither of them faltered. Jace's voice was hoarse as he whispered, "We don't break, Thera. Not today." And for the first time in her life, Thera believed it. Pain was the language the Gridhari spoke best. Every strike of the blade was a lesson in endurance, a reminder that survival wasn't just about strength, it was about resilience. Thera had lost count of how many times the blade had cut through her. The burning heat of the weapon, designed to slice through skin and bone alike, was unrelenting. She could feel the marks it left, each one more searing than the last, each one carving a new scar into her spirit. Beside her, Jace stood tall, blood dripping down his side, his breath coming in labored gasps. His exosuit had been damaged, the pressure systems struggling to keep him upright. And still, he didn't falter. He stood, defiant, a human who had never belonged here. And yet, he refused to be broken. The elders watched in silence, their eyes cold as stone, but Thra could see something in their gaze. Something almost curious. Curious? She almost laughed at the thought. They hadn't expected this. They hadn't expected her to survive this long, let alone fight back with such ferocity. She was too big for their expectations. Too strong. Too wild. The woman who had stood in their court, broken and shamed, was no longer here. She had become something else entirely, something they were beginning to realize they could no longer control. Enough, the lead elder finally said, his voice slicing through the tension like a blade itself. The custodians stepped back, lowering their weapons. The air was thick with the weight of their judgment. Thra didn't lower her weapon. She stood still, the blade in her hand trembling only slightly from the intensity of the trial. Blood dripped from her wounds, but her posture was unwavering. Jace's exosuit hissed as he took a deep breath, straightening up. His smile was grim. What now? The lead elder's gaze flicked to him briefly, as if surprised by his persistence, before turning back to Thra. You have passed the trial of endurance. You have proven yourself resilient. But there is another test. Thra's heart sank. She had expected this. They wouldn't just let her walk away free. The Grit-Hari never did. Their trials were not designed for victory. They were designed for submission. What other test? Thra asked, her voice steady despite the ache in her body. The elder's expression remained unreadable. You will face the test of choice. A challenge of spirit, not body. A choice that will determine your future, and the future of your union. Choice. Jace's voice was sharp, cutting through the air. What kind of choice? A choice of loyalty, the elder said, his tone final. You must choose between your bond with the human and your place in Grit-Hari society. One must be severed. You cannot have both. Thra's chest tightened, and for the first time in the trial, her breath caught. She had known this was coming, but the weight of it, the weight of having to choose between the people who had abandoned her and the man who had chosen her when no one else would, felt like a dagger thrust deep into her chest. Jace stepped forward, his face grim. What happens if we don't choose? The elder's gaze flickered with something resembling disdain. Then you will be erased. Neither of you will exist within the Grit-Hari system. You will be banished, lost, with no claim to anything. Thra felt a cold shiver run through her. The Grit-Hari didn't just exile people. They made sure you ceased to matter, that your name was wiped from every record, your existence forgotten. She turned to Jace, their gazes meeting in the shared silence of that moment. He was bleeding, his suit damaged beyond repair, but his eyes burned with something she knew too well. Defiance. I won't let them do this, Jace said quietly. Not to you. Not to us. Thra felt a surge of something deep inside her, something powerful. For the first time, she felt the weight of the choices ahead of her settle into her bones, but instead of crushing her, they gave her strength. I won't choose them, she said, her voice clear and unwavering. I choose you. Jace's hand found hers, and in that moment, it wasn't about survival anymore. It was about something greater, something that transcended the laws of the Grit-Hari. Something that no blade could sever. I choose you too, he said. The air in the tribunal hall grew still. The elders exchanged uneasy glances. They had never expected this. But Thra felt it then, the shift. She was no longer the exile, no longer the outcast. She was more than their laws, their trials, their judgments. She was free.